my life is I look at this whole experience as someone who is privileged to have the conversations on mental health. But I just know it's not just something you do from a study. I know at the end of the day, for me, and we'll talk lots about it, mental health for me is simplistic in my mind. It's a percentage of time you can stay in pleasant emotions to unpleasant emotions. And there's a whole lot of thinking you can do or behaviors to do that, but at a very simplistic level, if you're spending a lot of time in unpleasant negative emotions, that will impact how you're experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And if you can't get out of that, that could result in a mental illness. But mental health and mental illness are two different things, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Free to Grow in Forestry, a podcast working to move forestry forward. The Canadian Institute of Forestry and the Centre for Social Intelligence proudly present the Free to Grow in Forestry podcast. The Free to Grow in Forestry initiative was launched to create a diverse and inclusive workplace culture where all Canadians feel they belong. We believe strongly that inclusive cultures not only strengthen our Canadian forest sector economy, but also create resilient and healthy communities. This podcast seeks out guests from all aspects of the forest sector, from the C-suite to every part of the underrepresented communities, to open up the dialogue on issues of concern and points of view so that everyone has greater knowledge and understanding of each other. By unearthing these discussions, we hope to stimulate greater empathy and respect for all people, opening up the forest sector to be more welcoming and accepting of everyone. For our 6th episode, we are pleased to be joined by our host, Kelly Cooper, founder and CEO of the Centre for Social Intelligence, and our guest, Dr. Bill Howatt, founder and president of Howatt HR Consulting. As one of Canada's top experts in mental health issues in the workplace, Dr. Howatt brings a new perspective to the importance of mental health and illness, while also providing meaningful solutions and recommendations on how to adapt, support yourself and your peers, and seek help. This session was recorded live on October 27th, 2021.
Welcome, everyone, to our edition of the Free to Grow in Forestry podcast. Today, I am joined by Bill Howatt. Bill is with Howatt HR Consulting. He focuses in on mental health and mental illness issues in the workplace. And I'm going to have Bill introduce himself because he has quite an amazing background that is best described by him. Welcome, Bill.
Well, welcome, Kelly. Thank you very much for that. So you always create pause when you hear the word amazing in the same sentence with your own name. So I'll try to, as my grandmother would say, try to tell my story. So basically, most people are listening to this. My assumption is they're somewhat interested in this concept about mental health. And when you listen to people like me, it's helpful to get a context of what their experience are. And I look at it through 3 lenses when I do an introduction of myself. One, I can tell you the first part of me is the person who has a PhD in counseling psychology, and I spent my background working with people, focused in the last 30 years, seeing patients, writing in the area of mental health, focused in the area of mental health. I did my postdoc at UCLA School. So I've done enough clinically to create the illusion I know something in mental health. And then in the middle part of it, I've spent, years working in the corporate world. I worked in Wall Street for 12 years, for example, filling and consulting in different roles up to a chief of staff and a COO, worked as chief of research for Conference Board of Canada and Morneau Chappelle, and I have a company. So I have that corporate experience. The part that I feel the most privileged about is my personal experiences. I'm the kid who grew up in a foster home. I'm the kid who failed grade 2. I'm the kid who couldn't read or write till he was 18 years old. I'm the kid who life changed because someone gave me an accommodation when I was at Acadia University playing football. And what I've learned over the years is someone lived their entire life with a mental illness. From my experience come from, I have different types of mental illness. And people, when they look at it, they may not always understand. There's some of us have neurological, genetic mental illnesses. So for example, mine's ADHD and auditory and visual dyslexia. And that impacted my executive function of how I process. But there's trauma that happens, and everyone has different experience of what they call trauma. So my childhood experience of failing grade 2 wasn't super cool. Being adopted wasn't super cool. What happened to me in a foster home wasn't super cool. And so those experiences heightened my lizard brain, if you will, around anxiety. And lots of folks have anxiety. And all that really is our brain is in a threat response, anticipating potential threats. Anxiety makes a lot of sense. It's meant to protect us. The problem is when we don't know how to turn it off and we feel stuck and we get caught in it. So my life is, I look at this whole experience as someone who is privileged to have the conversations on mental health. But I just know it's not just something you do from a study. I know at the end of the day, for me, and we'll talk lots about it, mental health for me is simplistic in my mind. It's a percentage of time you can stay in pleasant emotions to unpleasant emotions. And there's a whole lot of thinking you can do or behaviors to do that. But at a very simplistic level, if you're spending a lot of time in unpleasant, negative emotions, that will impact how you're experiencing the world.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And if you can't get out of that, that could result in a mental illness. But mental health and mental illness are two different things, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, yes, and that's exactly where I wanted to go next. So thanks for that background explanation of your world. It's quite diverse, and you bring a lot to the table into this conversation. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. So let's start with a breakdown of the terms. Can you please explain for us the difference between mental health and mental illness?
Yeah, I can. So I think one of the best explanations for this was done by a chap in 2002, Keyes. And what he came up with is a concept that when people see people like me, so if you have a mental health issue or a mental illness and it's impacting your functioning, so you're struggling and symptoms, you come to someone like me, and we have a criterion, very much like a thing that diagnosed people who are caught in symptom loads. And if you meet a criteria, you could end up having a mental illness. And a mental illness is when in our part of the world, we use what's called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the ICD, which is the International Classification of Diagnosis, that was used by the World Health Organization. Really, for the layperson, what they need to know, a mental illness is the degree it's impacting our functioning, our ability either to process the world. So, for example, a schizophrenic, how they process the world, or someone or manage their system, whether they're bipolar. But though bipolar and schizophrenia are a very, very small percentage of all mental illnesses, a very small percent. The majority of mental illnesses are not, in my humble opinion, just organic. A lot of them are, I believe, are environmental. How we experience the environment, our parenting, our formal years around anxiety, depression, and we need to remember addiction. So if you think about the percent of time people spend in unpleasant emotion, that's one of the reasons why in Canada we have perhaps trying to escape unpleasant emotion. People engage in at-risk behaviors, and a lot of people get shamed by that, by alcohol, drugs, gambling, other things. But that's still a mental illness and still protected under human rights. So under Canada, to be very, very clear, if you have a degree of functioning, whether it's a traditional, what you would think is a mental illness or a substance use disorder, that impacts your function. You meet a criterion, meaning symptoms, frequency, duration, and intensity. And you don't ever self-diagnose, by the way. You have someone who's a professional, like myself, with credentials that diagnose it, then you have a mental illness. However, anybody like myself with a mental illness, we still have mental health, very much the same as you have physical health. So if you think about physical health, and it's really important to think about it this way, I think, because all of us can have context. So like, for example, if I have a 36-inch waist for a male, and I'm not paying attention to my lifestyle decisions, I'm taking more calories than I'm burning, I go to 38, I'll get used to 38, just go buy new pants. And then I go to 40, then I go to 42, then I go to 44, and then people start to say, well, you're just getting older. No, that's not, age doesn't drive this. Activity does in calorie intake. It's really quite simple. And what happens is all of a sudden I have a 46-inch waist, 10 inches bigger, and I get comfortable of being uncomfortable. And I'm going to say, this is just me. This is who I am. So we start to, like goldfish, establish our reality every day. We do that. Human beings may not know it, but every day we reset our norm for what our expectations for our life is. That's why some days we wake up and go, nope, going back to 36. And for whatever the reason, we start on that journey. Mental health is the same. Is if I'm spending 70% of my time in pleasant emotion and 30% of my time in unpleasant, that is excellent. Because what we need to understand, mental health is not about just being happy. It's being able to have the resources to meet the demands of the day, to have enough confidence that I feel comfortable in my skin, I'm feeling satisfied with my life, I'm feeling comfortable, but accept that we are going to have hard moments. The challenge is when my pleasant emotions move from 70 to 50, I move from feeling like I'm flourishing to I'm just languishing, getting by. Mm-hmm. Like Adam Grant talked about in the New York Times article he wrote about feeling blah. I'm just doing okay. Well, our mental state, our mental health is how we filter and process the world. So if I have flourishing and I have a more pleasant emotions, I look at things with perhaps a little bit more optimism or a little bit more energy or a little bit more hope. But if I'm caught in unpleasant emotion, I get dinged by stuff, then I could take a more skeptical. And here's what the key part of mental health is. Our emotions, and this is what many people don't know, our emotions are nothing more. They're genetically, we need them, they survive, but they're nothing more than a gas gauge in a car. They give us a reading to do some action. They don't tell us what to do or what to think. So it's two separate things. Sadly, if you don't understand mental health, your emotions, if you react to it, you start creating habitual habits of how you react that are driven by your thinking. And then from a neuroplasticity perspective, your thoughts and your emotions fire together, wire together, that creates your state. And that's why some people's true north is negativity. It's because they actually think life is happening at them versus understanding that they're not a passenger in the car. They actually have a wheel to steer and they have options. However, it's impossible for someone to change their mental health unless they have, in my humble opinion, some context of where they're going and how they can get there in regards to not reacting to their emotions, how to have a positive impact in their thinking, and how to engage in what I call pro-social behaviors, help-seeking behaviors, etc. So mental health and mental illness are two completely different constructs. But I'll say one last thing to make sure I close this so it's clear. Every patient that comes to me with a mental illness, the very first thing we work on is their mental health so they get the resources to start to activate their own treatment plan. So you have to get your mental health is how you see the world. Your mental illness, I live with a mental illness. So I'm like a diabetic, insulin, sugar. If I don't manage my pleasant to unpleasant emotions, I can relapse. If I don't,
how do you do that? How do you regulate those emotions and ensure that you're in the positive scale of things as opposed to slipping into the negative side?
It's a really good question. So what you do is understand that mental fitness is the same as physical fitness. So if the algorithm for physical fitness is exercise, diet, rest, relaxation, and lifestyle choices, if I do those well, we all know that, I reduce my risk for heart attacks, cancer, diabetes, and obesity. If you want to improve your mental health, getting on a Stairmaster, for example, once will never get you in shape. Taking a resiliency course once or reading a book will never create habitual change. If you want to have mental health like I do, I spend about an hour a day on my mental health. People go, what do you mean? I get up first thing in the morning. I sit by myself. I take a journal out. I plan, what do I need to do today? What could be my triggers today? What do I want to do? What are my goals today? Who could upset me today? And what is if I'm going to deal with this particular, in my head, I might go, first thought comes up, hey, it's a prick I got to deal with. No, let's reframe this. Somebody's a little bit challenging because what happens is when our self-esteem goes down, our ego goes up. So by pre-programming our brain to deal with my day, then what other things I'll do is I do my exercise. I meditate every day for a little bit. I use different things to get energy. If I feel a little bit flat, I wake up flat, I have a cold shower. So I'll do things to create energy. Like after this, before I eat, Link and I, my bulldog, will go for a 5K walk. Why? It's because he sat all day to listen to me talk to people. But walking for me is a bilateral process of not fitness. It's clearing my head with nature.
Right. I love that idea you mentioned, Bill, about anticipating the difficult parts of your day that you know are coming, or the individuals, and preparing for them, because what it does is, I think, reduce your impulse to respond in a very, knee-jerk way to
100%.
somebody. So when I think about applying this to the workplace, you may have a difficult colleague or boss or whomever that you have to interface with, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
But the notion that you've planted here of, hey, this is part of your orbit, or it's going to be part of your day. So don't get mad about it. Try and prepare for it psychologically, emotionally, breathe through it, or whatever you do to kind of reduce your stress, such that when you're ready to get engaged, you are in a better default position.
Yeah, good point. I think the other thing I'd add to that, just while you anchor the concept, because it's important, you'll always have unpleasant emotions. Like this idea that we're going to have this nirvana life. No one says life is supposed to be easy.
My father used to say,
learning to do that's hard. Learning to walk's hard. Learning to drive a bike is hard. Being married, being a parent, having a job. All of this stuff is hard. So why do we think we're supposed to be in some nirvana? It's not. That's expectation creates the drive for symptom relief versus this sitting in your upset and noticing it and becoming curious and observing, go, I wonder why I'm feeling this way. Using softer emotions versus hard, this is bad, I have to escape it. I need a beer, I need some drugs, I need to play video games. I need to escape this versus sit in it, because all emotions are transient, they come and go. The challenge is, how many people do you know have taken emotional literacy training? Not emotional intelligence, emotional literacy. Most males are terrible at this because we think we have a lobotomy that we're not supposed to feel anything. And it's in our society, we have, if you even have a heart attack, look what we do in society. If you're starting to have a heart attack in a restaurant, what do people do? They get up and walk away. I'm choking on food. What do? We get up and walk away. Our society, through survival of the fittest, whether we know this at a very genetic level, we don't want to be weak. But we're in a new age now. We have to start to challenge some of our evolution programming because it's not working. Because here's the deal. The number one cause of premature death on the planet before COVID, predicted by the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum by 2030, is depression. So that's another question that you're bringing up for me that I wanted to talk to you about, which is, although mental health is being discussed more and more, or mental illness, people interchange them. But for our purposes today, mental health, let's talk about that. Do you think the stigma associated with it has receded as a result? We're in this context of the pandemic. I know we're going to delve into that discussion today. There's a lot going on for everybody. It's extremely dense living. Question.
And like we're dealing with people saying, I need a mental health day. I need to call in sick. For the employer, that's becoming a challenge probably. For the employee, are they all coming forward with greater comfort and ease because of the, talk that we have about it in our society? This month alone, October 10th, is World Mental Health Day. That's why we wanted to speak with you in this particular month. But just in that context, can you share your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. So I may have a different point of view on this because I live with a mental illness. I think we're so far from understanding what the heck's going on in regards to self-stigma, peer stigma, and organizational stigma, because we've never prepared ourselves for what's beyond stigma. Let me explain this. So I have a whole bunch of degrees. I've been doing this for over 30 years. There's an expectation, because I'm a doctor, because I've been doing this for so long, that I'm supposed to be able to deal with stuff a certain way. Like there's an expectation on me. However, people may not realize it's people like me that live with habitual anxiety is not sometimes and have a neurological executive function ADHD thing. I'm working hard every day to keep the sucker on the rails, but I could get overloaded. And what the part of it is where I'm trying to go with this is that we're not sure yet, I think, if I tell someone I have a mental health issue or I have a mental health concern, what does that mean? That stigma will be judged, sure, shame. Now we're talking about it. Now, what does that really mean I need you to do? Or what do I need to do when I'm feeling a symptom load? So if I'm actually me, I will actually have learned, I actually know my threat response. What I do is I do one of three things. And people around me, when I worked in Wall Street, this is why I was successful there, because the CEO knew it. Either I shut down, I got angry, like push back like hard at them with aggression, or I avoided the situation. And if instead of sitting and being able to have the resources to talk in it because of my own defense mechanism, and instead of saying, Bill, you're anxious right now, you've got to calm down, it doesn't work. What my CEO was amazing, wasn't trained. He just said to me, Bill, what's your fear right now? I'm sensing something's bugging you. What are you fearful of? He created a soft conversation, created a space. I'm fearful I'm getting judged on this, or I'm fearful, you guys don't think I'm knowing what I'm doing. He goes, okay. And then he just kind of moved it into a soft conversation. Here's somebody who's involved in a multi-billion-dollar company with a CEO having a conversation that takes 3 minutes because he knows what type of performer I am. See,
is that what you refer to when you talk about emotional literacy?
Yeah.
He was an emotionally literate guy to be able to take what he was witnessing visually, yes, or audio, whatever, yeah, and translate that into a way that lowers the defense mechanism and allows for that more open dialogue.
Well, he knew he had to figure out what my emotion was. What was I fearful of?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point.
And so once he was able to say, hey, what are you fearful of? And I just wanted that these guys don't think I know what the hell I'm doing. And he laughed and he goes, well, do you? Because he had that rapport with me. Because I know you do. Do you know you do? Is this fear of that you don't know if you're good enough, Bill?
But how many people are as open as you, Bill, to, first of all, share with people they have ADHD, and then secondly, allow that question to be asked and answered in an honest dialogue? A lot of guys would be like, well, I'm not going to admit to my issues. In fact, I have a colleague who just recently did that.
Let's close the loop here. Your very first question, part of this, with more people are calling with mental health and calling in using mental health. What I'm trying to actually say is I'm thinking the problem is not whether people are going to come forward. You're talking about stigma. Mm-hmm. Is what are you doing? Like, stigma is a word for prejudice of implicit bias. It's not an operational term how to help a person get to pleasant emotions. And the challenge is with lots of people like myself who have stigma concerns, what I have learned, because I've become a walking accommodation, I don't have any fear because I know I'm a good person. I know I'm a smart person. I don't need validation from anybody else. I annoy the crap out of people, I'm sure, and I drive people crazy. But I've spent a long time. I'm no longer the kid in grade 2. I also know I will still have bad days. The powerful part, if we want to move this conversation to the next level, is we need to start talking about what's the beyond stigma conversation. It's because just because I tell you I have a mental health issue, so what? We still have to deal with it. I still have to operationalize. I still going to have unpleasant emotion. I still need to try to get my functioning done. So what? If I take a day off, so what? But we're not getting to the point really where I think what we need to do. We need to stop talking about just people coming forward. We need to move what's beyond stigma. I don't know what the word is, but I can tell you, someone with lived experiences like I do, it's what drives me back on my show is when I can feel judged because people go, I don't understand what's wrong with him. Like they don't see me when I'm in my vulnerable moment, is struggling and drowning my emotion. Like, it's like, if I could turn off my ADHD and my anxiety, do you think I would have done it by now? Yes. Is it real? Yes. Do I choose it? No. But the point being is, it's amazing how a little lifeline, a little conversation, those soft conversations can move you laterally so you get your threat response down so that you can get into an adaptive response. And that's what he did. That's all Alan did with me. He detected a threat response, and he just created soft emotions, because anxiety is a secondary emotion. It's not primary. Fear is a primary emotion. And so when you're dealing with this, if you can start getting people at that level, it's important. And to your question about how many people feel comfortable, not enough. But even if people come forward, Kelly, I'm not sure they're convinced they know how to advocate for themselves, or the person on the other end has a clue how to have the conversation and create a soft conversation. And that's where I think if you can get people starting to ask you, so how do we get to that point? That to me is beyond stigma we need to get to.
So interesting. And, I'm thinking about how disabilities are one of the underrepresented groups we're trying to advocate for in the workplace these days. And we're really trying to discover what we need to do on all of these underrepresented groups discussions. What do we do for people of color to help them feel more comfortable? What do we do for people, just women, gender, differences? What do we do for those who have disabilities like what you're describing? And with all the other kind of categories that I've just mentioned, it seems to be a common denominator of people need to become more educated and informed so that the onus isn't on those other people. So it's an evolution we're in. I think that the way the workplace has been in its very traditional sense that our people of our generation have been going through, I feel that we're going through an evolution of social transformation from where we are as a traditional workplace to something that we can't quite pin down or describe or articulate. Just as you said, we don't know what that end state is past people coming forward and others going, oh, okay, what do we do with that? So how do we get people into this sort of vision state of what we want in the workplace? Because I think you may have some nuggets to share with us from the disabilities perspective that not only will be helpful in that context, but all these other underrepresented groups contexts.
So I would say a couple things. I think the first thing that I don't think we do enough is in workplace mental health. I think we're spending our time at the car wreck. Let me explain what I mean by that. If I have a heart attack, and that's when they start me on statins, that's too late.
No, I
go in for my annual physical because we have an allopathic medicine model, and we do my blood work. And oh, Bill, this is up. Oh, your HDLs are this, your LDLs. You, my friend, or we need to get you on some plaque thinner. Okay, why? Because we want to reduce your risk for heart attack. We do that all the time. But we don't sit there and go, Bill, and so let's do your anxiety profile. Let's do this. What's your mental fitness? What's your mental health? We get people on the scales, but we don't say, what percent of the time, Bill, are you spending in pleasant emotions versus unpleasant emotions? So step number one, we spend a disproportionate amount of money when people are broken. And both totally allopathic, chronic disease, and mental illness. So we have now, employers will go, EAPs are mental health strategy or extended benefits. That's a part of it. So prevention, targeted prevention on mental fitness, and accepting that mental fitness is like occupational health and safety, meaning personal protective equipment, a hard hat. Any construction site, anybody who's in forestry, they're not going to say, hey, dude, you only have to wear it one day of the month. You have to wear it every day. And we're going to put you through safety training all the time. Why? So that you can stay safe physically. Okay. The last line of defense for human beings in mental health is PPP, personal psychological protection. So mental fitness is something that employees would need to be doing forever. So employers can get their head around it, that I'm not going to invest just in an app. I just did a scientific study. People need people. Apps are like a Fitbit. They facilitate. But if you're going to give someone a mental health app and think that's going to do it, your adherence rate, you're going to get a very small percent of the population. People that are on pleasant emotions won't use those apps. People need people. Apps, technology, and this is just Bill speaking. I'm sure the big app companies will disagree with me, but the reality is I'm just looking at science of getting people need people. So prevention number one, transformation, not just doing a resiliency course once, but how do we help support resiliency all through the year? Like gym equipment. How do we buy employees mental fitness equipment? So prevention is number one. If we do that well, employers have a massive opportunity to mitigate mental health issues. Massive opportunity. Second, if we are going to do anything with mental health, if we're not measuring it, it doesn't count. Random acts of wellness. So what I mean by that, lots of organizations will do the following. We have EAP, we'll train our managers, and we do this. They do the P, plan, and the do. They don't do the C, check, or act of continuous improvement. For example, the CSA standard of Canada would talk about around psychological health and safety. So I believe if organizations are going to do anything with workplace mental health, they need to measure if what they're doing is actually working. So for example, if you're going to spend $50,000 on a resiliency workshop and put a bunch of employees through it, and you don't measure, not if they like the course. That's like, you have to understand what Kirkpatrick said about program evaluation. Level 0 means we think it's a good idea. Reasonably believe if you give people tools, okay, that's level 0. Level 1 is the employee goes, yeah, you know what? It was interesting. I got a couple ideas. Level 2 is they can answer a test that they have some knowledge retention. Level 3, they transfer it into their job and it helps them daily mitigate unpleasant emotions. Level 4, it has financial impact. It's impacting retention. It's impacting all those things. Many organizations just check the box.
Yeah.
And they think we believe, geez, we just send them this workshop, that'll fix them. We got to stop all the silliness.
Well, don't you see it's a two-pronged approach, though? I mean, the organizations can do certain things to put in place these resilience training opportunities, but it becomes also down to the individual to take ownership and responsibility and accountability for what they're doing. So when I look at D&I in general, I completely go at it from an organizational and an individual perspective to really affect change over time.
That's my point. I think employers, how they communicate up front, setting expectations, say, we're offering a resiliency program based on the social determinants of health, not using that language. We're providing this opportunity. These programs don't work. Information's not transformation. So your role is on practicing it. How can we help you take this information and master it? Because habits don't change in 21 days. So if you have heuristic scripts based on your basal ganglia of all the automatic coping skills that you have, like potato chips, not that I'm against potato chips, but if that's your go-to when you're stressed, or ice cream or something else, it will take up to 200-300 days for you to actually start reprogramming your brain so that, because willpower is only a short-term, it's not a long-term solution. So that's why so many people fail diets, because they're trying to willpower versus doing it small chunks. Like, I'll just drink water instead of Coke. I'm going to do that for 3 months. I'm going to stop eating at 7. Do that for 3. To create the habits, small micro habits take time.
There, but how do you recommend that for people who are listening? So, somebody, for example, maybe they have mental health issues. They're suffering with depression right now, thanks to all the pandemic issues and life and everything's crashing. And they know they are in this rut and they're trying to get out of it, but they just can't get out of it. They seem to find themselves in the same repetitive situation and they just need help. So beyond, like you say, you can't just always call in sick. You can't always just draw on the EAP. You need to do something, but how do people go about that? What do you recommend?
I think there's a couple of things I would say to you, not knowing the context, because that's a big sphere. So one is I'm a big proponent of help-seeking behavior. So if you're stuck for 30 days in unpleasant emotions and you can't, for example, if you say one thing, I'm going to focus on my sleep, and you can't do that, or I'm going to focus on my nutrition, just pick one thing. I'm going to stop drinking so much. I'm going to focus. If you can't make micro decisions and execute them because your emotions are overwhelmed and you're caught in constant fight or flight, come see someone like me and let's work on a plan, because you have some scripts that need to be changed. And cognitive scripts take about 10, 12 weeks to start reprogramming scripts, to start giving you some direction. Cognitive behavioral therapy works, period. So those things, but cognitive behavioral therapy, there could be other therapies like emotional therapy, attachment theory, depending on the situation. Like you let somebody help you get the foundation so you get some symptom relief, start moving. However, if you said to yourself, well, I just want to start charging my battery and create more pleasant emotion, but I don't know where to start. I can tell you where to start. Your number one thing is if you're sleep, believe it or not.
I always said sleep is king.
Sleep, if you're not getting at least 7 hours of quality sleep, not quantity. So in other words, if you're in bed and you're having trouble with your sleep patterns, you're not going to bed at the same time, not waking up, your sleep, you're not creating good circadian rhythms, and you have what are called ulterior rhythms working inside that. But focus on that. So if it's sleep hygiene, meaning how you get ready to have good sleep, or insomnia, you deal with those. You focus on that. And if you don't know where to start, you talk to your family doctor. Just talk to someone who's do a sleep study. You'll get all in on that one. Mm-hmm. You say, I'm going to focus on my sleep, and I'm going to get that sucker right over the next 3 months, because sleep can drive depression. It creates fatigue, and it can create other things. Next number 2 is diet. If your caffeine, so think about it. If I told you the number of patients that come to me with anxiety, which is caffeine driven, and the number of patients come to me with depression that's fatigue driven, sleep, those 2 factors are critically. And what I find with a lot of males is they don't take enough protein. They're eating too many sugar carbohydrates like flours and sugars and pops and junk food and stuff that anything out of a box, too much of it is not good for you. So paying attention, because serotonin, your well-being drug, is not made in your head, it's made in your gut. So what you put in your mouth matters. Hydration is also a huge problem. A lot of people don't realize how dehydrated people are. And so what I tell people all the time, people go, well, what are you talking about? I always talk about, I said, check your pee, check your pee. People look at me, what do you mean? Check your pee. Pee, yellow, dehydrated. Check your pee. I know exactly what you're talking about. Check your pee. If it's not clear, not drinking enough water. If you're not peeing at least every 2 hours, you're not drinking enough water. Drink more. Pee every hour. Get going. And so what I tell people, and they laugh at me, but I'm telling them your body, because your cortisol levels and how your endocrine system works, if you're flushing your body all the time, you're helping your body get rid of that junk. That's how
the toxins. Yeah. We're mostly made up of water, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So if we can get sleep, nutrition, then the next one is, people go, what's the next one, Bill? Move and stretch. We are sitting too much, and chronic pain creates a lot of unpleasant emotions. A lot of back pain happens from the quadratus rectus spinae region of the body and the hamstring shortening. So a lot of people, if they just walk 8,000 to 10,000 steps, so I'm going, like I said, I'm like an hour to go for a walk. Then I come back and I do that plank stuff and stretch stuff. And if I do that, I'm building what's called my rectus abdominis. But what happens is that's your abdominal muscles, but you have a protagonist and antagonist. So if you work your body in your posture, you'll have less risk for pain, because a lot of people's physical health is due to how their body gets out of line, because they're shortening muscles, tightening muscles. Our bodies are supposed to be flexible. And people go, I'm getting older. Again, age has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think that people's mind create their health conditions. So I'm a firm believer in all that holistic approach to what your mind is thinking about and how you operate in your brain and the positivity. It plays out and manifests in your health. So it sounds 100%. Like that's what you're saying. Yeah.
100% agree.
What are the signs that people should look out for in the workplace to determine if their peers or employees need help in any way?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things I would say to you is that I'm not going to tell you depression or anxiety symptoms. I don't think they need to know that. What they need to know is patterns. Let me explain that. So we don't have to be a psychology or a mechanic to be able to know what I'm about to tell you. I have one of those cars where you press the button and it starts. And so if I go have my key and I sit in the car and I press the button, I put my foot on the brake and the car doesn't start, I reasonably ought to know there's something wrong with my car. I don't have to be a mechanic. I don't have to diagnose it. I just know there's something wrong with my car. I also know that I can call AAA. That doesn't mean I need a new car, but I just know something's off with my car. Put in the context of workplace mental health, if someone is normally pretty good spirited and they're more irritable, if someone's usually pretty punctual and they start to get a little late, if someone's a bit of an introvert and they become more of an extrovert, or an extrovert becoming more an introvert, you start noticing things that are not their traditional flight pattern that is impacting their workplace experience with themselves. In other words, meaning they're missing work, they're having more conflict with their peers, they more self-doubt.
Taking risks.
Yeah, taking risks, for example. Yes, 100%. Bullying can, because that's more irritability. Sticomas, which we're using heavy equipment, means creates blind spots. That's like the equivalent of driving down the road and missing the exit. You get caught in. So that's where a lot of accidents can happen with machinery. Why people cut their fingers off, like carpenters and that, because they mind went somewhere else while they had a saw going. So a part of all of this, if you want to support people, is notice. But just because someone, Kelly's late once, you're going to go, mental health issue. No, you gotta see a pattern.
Over what kind of a time period would you?
I would actually say if I saw a pattern over a 2-week period, then I know that they're not just having a bad couple of days.
Their resilience is down.
Yeah, and they're just more, and they're maybe changing more. They're more disheveled. They're not dressing up like they did. They're less pride. Hygiene's changing.
And so in those cases, what do you recommend that people do? So say, I'm witnessing this of a colleague and I'm saying, okay, I see all these signs that Bill's just laid out. What is it that we should be doing for those folks? And how do we do that? Like that whole, like you mentioned, emotional literacy. Like if you're able to give us some examples of using that in that context.
Yeah, if I'm a manager, you'd want to, I'm going to do this because we're on a podcast really quickly. I would want the managers to get trained in how to do what's called duty to inquire. Because if you have a direct report who has a mental health or a substance use issue in the workplace, they're protected under the charter. And you need to be able to be mindful not to get engaged in performance management, but focus on doing a duty to inquire. In other words, doing what I'm going to explain now that you could do with a friend. You can actually, instead of saying, hey, Kelly, you're feeling pretty bad today, or like, or I think you're depressed, or no, that's not what we want to say. Say, hey, Kelly, I've noticed. First of all, you set the stage. Can I have a talk to you, private, confidential? Say, Kelly, I just want to check in and make sure you're okay, because I've noticed that you were late on this day. I know that you were upset with Jim, and you did this and do that. And that's not my experience with you. I'm noticing, like, is everything all right? And you might say it's none of your business, and say, okay, that's cool, but I just want to let you know. If you're a manager, we deal with that different. If you're a friend, say, that's cool. Just wanted to let you know that I'm here. If you'd like to talk to someone, I'm just noticing you don't seem like yourself. I was just worried about you. I'm not trying to be pushy. And if you need someone to talk to, I'm here for you. And then what happens is, if they do trust you, they might turn around and say, oh, my wife left me. Or my son, something happened. They could be a little emotional about it. And you might say, instead of you trying to become the therapist, you might say, okay, that sounds like that's real. That sounds real. And I'm sorry you're going through that. I'd love to be able to support you through it. Can we talk about some, tools that we could use to help support you too, like our EAP program or our extended benefit or community mental? Because, talking to someone who's trained in this could be really, really beneficial for you. Because what people may not know, your audience may not know, we're really good at treating mental health. I mean, amazingly good at it. If we can get someone in to treatment, statistically, we're about 88 to 89% impact.
But isn't that the trick, is to get them to treatment? Like some people will not. I know people who they deny they have anything wrong, and they just keep plowing away, being jerks. And you're just like, good grief, like we all see it, but they don't see it. They deny they need any help. They definitely need help. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's a good question. Step number one is we just want to make sure we give a pathway. We have the hope. If we have someone who is in their unpleasant emotion and are filled with stigma, they're really, really self-esteem's low, ego is high, defense mechanisms. This is all defense mechanism stuff, right? And they feel they're being judged. So think about, they're already judging themselves. Now they feel they're being judged. So all we're doing is compounding, and because 55% of all our communication is non-verbal, so they're picking up disapproval. So we're feeding the pump a bit too with these folks without realizing what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Part of it is empathy, step one. Empathy, the word of empathy, most people don't even understand how to define it. Empathy is suspending judgment and being interested in the other person's experience without judgment and sharing your experience of vulnerability. So I've had people who are a jerk, and I say, okay, I'm asking you, trying to help. I said, and they'll go, well, I know your business. And I'll go, are you interested that I feel uncomfortable talking to you because I'm right now nervous interacting with you, that I'm going to upset you?
Well, they would probably say, well, then don't interact with me. You don't need to be having this conversation.
Yeah, and that's important if they said that. And then the next question is, then can you explain to me, then how do we tell the boss how we're going to work together if I don't feel comfortable? So if they said, well, it's not my problem, I said, well, it is our problem. And so if the boss gets involved in this, what is our storyboard going to be? I can try to resolve this with you, but I don't feel comfortable. And what happens is even jerks have empathy. And unless they're a sociopath or a psychopath, from my experiences, if you don't meet them with anger and you meet them with an open hand and just be vulnerable and say to your character, because you have no other agenda except to be a human being with a human being, then you have a chance. But here's the deal. Denial is a big thing because it defines us, that we need to accept our medicine or accept what we have. Well, I will tell you, kindness and empathy, those factors, Forbes magazine's the number one skill we need right now to get management through is empathy.
I agree. But you didn't mention on your list of definitions there, you said sociopath, psychopath. I would argue narcissists.
Yeah.
And I would argue that a lot of people, and narcissism can be a very positive thing. You can have narcissistic politicians who do great, good things for the world, and people who run the companies successfully, and they do all kinds of great stuff. Yeah. Then you can have the other flip side of that narcissist who lack empathy.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are difficult to maneuver. They're charming. Yeah. They are very capable on a number of fronts. And you're trying to navigate those people to get help or diffuse dynamics in a workplace. And maybe this is applicable to people's home life too. They're with their partners. How do you deal with that?
And narcissism. Well, if we're going to get into narcissism, that's a whole that's a whole hour conversation. But to kind of cut through it, I think one of the things that I wrote an article last year on narcissism in the workplace, and what I think the trick to it for a layperson, if they're dealing with a narcissistic person, is not to try to tell them what they are or what they're not. Just tell them, make sure they're very clear about your experience and what your actions need to be for you. So I find someone I don't feel safe working with that person, I'm entitled to say I don't feel safe or comfortable talking to that person. Now, a narcissist doesn't like failing or doesn't like other people's problems being more of a center of attention than their challenge. So what happens is that you can't fix a narcissist. It's not your role. If in a workplace context, you're just trying to create space, but here's the point. It's really important that under occupational health and safety, every employee has a right to come to work to feel safe. Bill C-45, it's not never, that's a Westray legislation. It's never really been leveraged yet to the level I think it could be. But it made it very clear around managers' responsibilities to protect employee safety. It didn't differentiate between physical and psychological safety. Provinces around occupational health and safety, with the exception of Nova Scotia right now, it's very clear around, respectful workplace, the expectations around employees. And I don't know if Scotia will catch up eventually. They just had a messy case that's delayed everything. But my sense is the big thing is don't take on the role of trying to fix other people. However, be very mindful, set a boundary for yourself about other people's behavior impacting your mental health. The other one to pay attention to around narcissists are really good is gaslighting. They're really good at getting a person believing that they're not thinking what they're thinking. Like, you don't really think this, or you're this or that. They're really good at having people start to self-doubt themselves that they're the problem.
Manipulating. Yeah.
Yeah. So be careful of that as well.
Well, Bill, I know we've had an excellent conversation. I have just another question, though, before we wrap it up. I'm wondering what your perspective is on people who work out in the field and their mental health, specifically in the forest sector. Of course, the forest sector, being in the forest, is a positive impact, right? It's a positive thing. Yeah. But are there things that we should know about that can be mental health flags for people to watch out for who work remotely?
Yeah, I think isolation and loneliness, whether we talk about it enough, I think that's been a population is probably being used to working on their own, probably gravitate to it, enjoy it, and that kind of thing, and et cetera. But it is a new psychosocial factor that we pay a lot of attention to now, is isolation, loneliness. I think one of the big ones is to be agnostic. This is what I was going to say, be agnostic of what sector someone works in, be aware that everyone has mental health. So the question to really sit, if we're going to do it and we're supporting in forestry, for example, what are our mechanisms in place as an employer to help provide employees with knowledge and support for prevention of mental health? And what do we do for, if in the point in time, if they need support, if they're experiencing something with mental health, and then start actually figuring out how do we deliver services to a remote mobile workforce? When do we make time for accessibility? So I'm working with a large trucking company right now. It was interesting. So we're doing mental fitness. And they said to me, Bill, how are we going to do this? And I said, super, podcasts. So we're delivering all the content in podcasts so that they can listen to it while they're trucking.
Perfect.
So it gives them something to do. And what we're getting is some pretty cool feedback, because it gives them something, a place for them to focus attention. So delivery of service, accessibility. The other thing is, wouldn't it be kind of neat to do some focus groups with this population and ask them what supports work, what supports don't, what could you benefit from?
And what do you need?
Yeah. Instead of
just ask those questions, instead of shooting in the dark, not thinking you're doing it right, just say, let's do a little survey here.
100%.
So a lot of people don't, it's just like, I find it so interesting because people don't want to come forward, for example, on surveys to identify as Indigenous all the time, or at least there used to be that way.
Yeah.
There's some stigma was attached to that, which is unfortunate and sad. We're at a new place. I'm hoping that's shifting in the workplace. But similarly with the disabilities, people are not, they're reluctant, let's just say, to self-identify as having anything wrong with them mentally. But you could do it obviously through an aggregate survey, find out just what you're asking, what are your needs? What would be helpful? What could be supportive as we work together to make this workplace healthy
100%.
For all? Yeah.
No, it's good. No, it's good stuff. But I think the point being is the work you're doing is important, because if you keep this conversation going over and over and over, there's no ending to the sucker, by the way, just so you know.
Yes, I can see that. Well, Bill, thank you so much for your time today, your insights, your knowledge, tactics, everything you've shared today has been very helpful. And I hope our listeners agree. So why don't we leave with you telling us where they can reach you?
Yeah, for information about how we can help you, just go to www.howathr.com. Visit our website, and if there's things there you're interested or ask questions, folks on my team will be more than happy to get back to you. You also can find information on my books on billhowatt.com, where my Cure to Loneliness book and other books are at.
Wonderful. And just to clarify for folks, Howatt is Howatt.
Yes, Howatt.
Oh, good. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bill. Have yourself a wonderful walk with your dog. I will think of you relaxing, recharging your brain and mental health, and doing the reset. I've learned so much today. Thank you very much.
Have a great one. Thanks for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Gender, diversity, and inclusion are crucial to the advancement of a thriving and resilient forest sector. As we continue to grow and change, we all have a role to play in making our sector a place where everyone has the support they need to succeed and thrive. For more information on how you can take action and help make a difference, follow Free to Grow in Forestry on social media or visit us at www.freetogrowinforestry.ca. And if you have a story you think should be heard about an experience you have had or what you'd like to see happen in the Canadian forest sector workforce, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at freetogrowinforestry@cif-ifc.org. Together, we can move forestry forward.